Hey everyone, this is Jesse here. Okay, so we're doing something a little different this time. For Radka Janeková talk, you know her in the chat as Ria there. If you could, there is a link in the PDGC main stage there that you just need to click on. We have 9 people in the meeting, and it's going to be a screen share where she's going to actually show off her screen there. Probably useful for someone who's a coder. So yes, please join in over there. And then at that point, we will have Rhea talk here. Rhea, go right ahead if you want to start off and talk.
Okay.
Yep.
So welcome everyone. I would like to first of all thank you, Jesse, for organizing this. My name is
Absolutely. Thank you.
Radka. My name is Radka. You may know me around Discord as well. I have a vocal cord disability, so if you can't hear, you can type in the chat and I can try to be clearer or something. And I got a cold as well. um, I currently work around .NET Core on Linux. I work for Red Hat and I lead .NET team on Fedora. However, this is not what I'm gonna be talking about since this is gaming conference and not really Linux. I used to be a game developer, game programmer, and I was working on projects like Angry Birds, World of Tanks, which is what I would like to tell you about. A little bit about World of Tanks because we had quite interesting challenges there with physics and all those things. Due to NDA, I'm unable to actually show you any code, but I can tell you about it, about those problems and how did we try to solve them. So I'm gonna start with the meat model. I'm gonna show you how does it work in real life tanks. You should be able to see my screen now, hopefully. So basically, I'm gonna draw, by the way. So this is armor of the tank. So blue will be armor of the tank. And we'll be talking, I will be using terms like normal angle. So what is normal? Normal is this line, which is perpendicular to the armor. And normal angle in that case will be something like, oops, that didn't quite look like a straight line. So this will be normal angle alpha. This is angle under which the shell will hit the tank armor. Why is this important? Because as you can see, if I would extend this line a little bit further, the distance the shell would have to travel through the armor is bigger than as if it would be perpendicular. So generally it would be harder to penetrate if the angle is bigger. There can be 3 cases of penetration. What can happen? Under this angle, let's say we would penetrate and with specific numbers. If the shell would hit actually 90 degrees exactly at the normal angle, that would actually mean that the shell would in real life shatter. We skipped this for gameplay reasons because it's a little bit illogical for a gamer who didn't study all these mechanics and stuff. So we skipped the shattering of the shell if it hits exactly perpendicular. And we will be talking also about this. If the shell would hit the armor at my pen turned off, this kind of angle, logically you can guess it would just bounce off and you wouldn't do much. Okay, next, what in real life what tank engineers do, which could be achieved by two technical difficulties. It doesn't want to work. Okay, now I have all the windows. I'm gonna switch color. I'm gonna switch color. This is typical outline of a shell, right? Some kind of projectile. And this kind of shell doesn't really have any specific properties. It's generic shell. However, tank engineers came up with several different types of shells. For example, this would be one with kind of a straight tip. And another type could be also really sharp one. I'm gonna over-exaggerate this a little bit. And then with kind of a straight area, and then it would continue as a normal shell. So these shapes are designed, first of all, this one has usually different kind of different alloys inside. So the outside shell would shatter if it would impact at 0 angle. Outside shell would probably shatter, however, the tip would still go through. So that is designed to mitigate this negative effect. Now this one, and partially also this one, they usually, if you imagine the shell, I'm gonna try to draw it here. This is the shell with the dull tip. What will happen if it's hitting the tank armor under this angle? Well, thanks to physics, as you can see, it would try to tip over a little bit closer, so it wouldn't bounce so much. It wouldn't just jump off, but it would actually penetrate. So that's another trick that real-life engineers came up with. Half of these did we implemented in World of Tanks, half of them we didn't. So now we know about normalization. That's the little trick that we would use to get closer to ideal angle, you could say. So I'm gonna draw it. This would be the angle after normalization. And since I managed to draw it so small, I'm gonna call it beta. How do we calculate actual effective armor thickness? That's the one that we take under this specific angle. That's quite easy. This would be armor thickness. Let's say that's H. Now what we want is this thickness, right? It's quite simple. As you can see, you can already see the typical triangle. It's even this kind of triangle, and we've got a nice, beautiful alpha angle. Armor thickness would be T equals H divided by cosinus of the alpha angle. If we apply normalization, then it's gonna be alpha minus beta. It's quite simple math that has to be calculated every single time you fire. And in case of AI, because we did look into implementing AI, actually the AI would kind of fake fire because the AI is AI and it actually knows what armor does the enemy have. And it would have several different points on the enemy tank where it would test fire from their position, check these angles, and pick the best one where it would have the highest chances of penetrating. It's not exactly like, okay, so shell. Every shell has some specific energy that it can penetrate. This depends on its caliber. Caliber of a shell is its thickness. This is caliber, right? Then you have the penetration energy is given in millimeters of how thick armor can we penetrate. So say for example 200 millimeters shell would be able to penetrate this armor if this thickness was less than 200 millimeters. However, what if H is 190, the shell is 200, and we have some angle? Well, chances are not bright anymore. In the game, we added random numbers. Of course, every game has random numbers. We had plenty of random numbers. This would actually be plus minus 20%. So, uh, so again, there was more math to calculate. Can you please not do that? I want the line. So there will be a lot more math to calculate every single time you're trying to fire. All this introduces a lot of performance issues, a lot of raycasts to find out where are you hitting. Imagine a tank. Here is a tank. It has some kind of turret. Here is enemy tank. And this tank has to fire in ballistic curve, which we did simulate to be as close to realism as possible. However, how do you solve the problem with aiming? Because you need to display some reticule on the GUI, right? So in order to be able to know where are we aiming, we need to raycast from the camera. Here is camera. This is my camera, okay? So we need to raycast from the camera in a straight line because it's GUI and it will be displayed somehow. So we need to raycast in a straight line. How do we actually know where to fire the physical shell that's actually simulated from this? I mean, I personally, you know, just looking at this picture, it makes very little sense. So we would take the distance from the camera. Where did we hit the tank? We will get the point. We know where to hit. We don't know what is the elevation angle, right? I'm gonna take different color to not be too confusing. This is elevation angle. Let's call it gamma, whatever. This is elevation angle. Now we have one tank, second tank, straight raycast, and we need to simulate this. We need to find out what's our elevation angle, which we still don't know. And yes, it would take some time to actually arrive to the target. So if they are moving, you need to aim a little bit ahead of them. How did we actually get around this problem? Because you still need to also check what if there is a huge tree or I'm under I'm in a cave or there is something above me. I can't just pretend that I fired and hit the target. I need to actually check if I'm going to hit this. So what we did was actually take a lot of little tiny raycasts. We would always have the shell here, raycast, some distance in a straight line. And with all these tiny lines, we would it approximate the curve. The problem with that was performance again. We had to find the right balance between perfect curve, which would mean a lot of tiny recasts, or balance, which would mean two really crappy recasts. So yes, what Botman said is quite true. Real World of Tanks are like the original World of Tanks because we were working on prototypes for new different game modes and new gameplay for World of Tanks. So we did experiment a little bit more than the actual World of Tanks than the original one. So we had a little bit more detailed physics than the actual World of Tanks. We did actually manage to succeed quite well with it, with all our little tweaks. um, so World of Tanks is not that real. It does have ballistic curves, but they are very, very shallow. They do not follow the real projectile velocities. I actually did research the actual projectile velocities and implemented them the numbers real world, real size. So World of Tanks actual ballistic curve would look like almost a line, like just barely curved. I'm gonna turn this off because it's ugly. So um, so now what happens when we actually fire and we actually hit the tank? So we hit the tank. We've done the math. We know the effective armor thickness under the angle we hit the tank. Now, how do we know? Because those tanks have different armor thickness in the back, different armor thickness in the front, etc. I can show you some pictures from World of Tanks. So this would be blue is really thick armor. Light blue is a little bit less, and rear is usually really weak, right? So a different armor thickness means that we had a lot of different colliders. Those are all those tiny squares and circles are different modules, different colliders where you would hit. Oh, of course, these are just approximations. They're just outlines. They're not actually of this shape. So our first approach was to just take the mesh collider the way it was, like the actual mesh of the tank. That will be the most precise. Performance. We've hit the performance again with so many little tiny triangles. Performance impact was really huge. What I did, I went to our artists and I was like, could you make me another mesh of the tank? But make it just like with 3-4 triangles, make it simple. Just rough shape of the tank. So we get the right angles on, for example, this IS-3 has this weird kind of V shape thing. So that way we would have the right angles of the armor, but we wouldn't lose all the performance on the details. That's how we around the performance issue with colliders. Next, there were a lot of internal modules. As soon as you would hit the tank, the shell would still travel further inside of the tank and it would hit further modules. Actually, I can go back to the picture. So the tiny red balls are, those spheres are modules. The tiny red ones are external, which means, like, I don't have higher quality picture, which means, for example, this is a viewport of the driver and his gun. This is the viewport of I don't know who. Now there is a gunner, loader, and what's his name? Commander. There on top. All these are kind of weak spots that if you hit there, there's just some glass or something. I'm sure it's a really strong one, but it probably wouldn't survive a hit from a tank shell. So those are weak spots that have zero armor. So if you would hit those, you would hit the person behind it and kill them and deal damage. What happens if you kill this driver here? Well, it would set the engine to be damaged because engine is what's driving the tank. Damaged engine has less power. The tank would go slower because, for example, the in real life comparison would be that the driver is dead and the commander has to go down and take his seat. Commander is not as skilled as the driver, therefore he can't be so agile and can't go so fast. Now these purple or pink spheres here and all these blue things on the wheels, that's different kind of modules that would not deal damage. They would just they would just trigger damaged or destroyed module. Depending on what events do you sign up for it, it would display different stuff on the GUI. In case of these wheels and the track belt, it would sign up an event that will swap the mesh of the track belt and display destroyed mesh of track belt that's kind of like spread around the tank, scattered and destroyed. So now we've got destroyed track belt. It takes a certain amount of time to repair. When it's repaired, it will send an event that it was repaired, but it will never be fully repaired. It will stay damaged. It will have less health. It will be easier destroyed again. But you can move. You can at least move slowly, but you can. Um, I'm checking on you. um, okay. Next problem with performance was the track belt. Because our first idea was to take a lot of tiny pieces and actually simulate them by physics in the real world. That was just an experiment that turned out to go exactly as we thought. You can take a guess. It didn't go well. FPS was like 1 frame per second, maybe two. And that was with just one or two tanks. Imagine you have 15 tanks in one game and you simulate all those track belts. So we quickly abandoned that idea and we would use really accurate simulation for only the player tank. And all the other tanks, so like enemies and friendlies, they would be simulated in just visually. They wouldn't actually have physical trackball. And just visually, it would be, I'm gonna draw rough idea of what this track belt look like. Okay, so we've got one, apparently I'm drawing on one that's invisible. We've got one wheel, then we've got a bunch of wheels that are on the road, and we've got another wheel. So now our track belt looks like this. So that's the track belt. What we would do, we would take tangents, a lot of tiny tangents on the wheels, like in specific points. For example, this would be one point, would be another point, another point, another point, another point, another point, and again 2 points on this wheel. And we would connect these points and draw the sorry, and we would draw the mesh of of the of those little tiny trackball pieces, which would be pre-configured of how many do we fit in, so it looks good. Well, does the screen share work or not? Okay, don't scare me. I'm drawing it and then you tell me that I'm not drawing it. So, and then we would just simply connect these with lines. That would be one line of the track belt, another line, and we would just draw it. It wouldn't take much performance. It was all done in code. So this was our trick to simulate the track belt, while it was still very accurate because you've got physics on the wheels, and every single wheel can move up and down. Every single wheel can go up and down um, with suspension. Actually, you can see it on one of these pictures, which I'm unable to bring up again. Uh, on this one, for example, this is the IS-3 on a rock. As you can see, these wheels are on the ground, they are straight, and then there is a bump on the rock. And you can see that your track belt is really nicely following them, really precisely. So it looked good. And when you were moving on the terrain, it was amazing. I don't really have more pictures about that would nicely display the wheels, but as you can see, we've set the suspension in a way that it would really even go like really high. Like this is what it would look like on normal straight ground, and you can compare it to this. It's kind of yeah. By the way, speaking of suspension, how does suspension on a tank work? I'm gonna show you on this picture. Whoops. So you can see this arm. This is an arm that's holding the wheel. And this arm would simply go up and down. It would kind of spin. And it's on a bar that goes into the tank, and it's firmly fixed there. So the bar is actually twisting. It's twisting metal because the tank is heavy and it can actually twist it like that. So that's how the actual suspension works. It's quite cool. I was watching documentaries about this when I was doing the research in order to be able to actually simulate the suspension properly. It was really cool. Like the documentary about how did they come up with it. For example, the Hellcat, if you're familiar with tanks, that was a really fast tank and it was one of the first tanks that was using torsion bars. Next problem we encountered was aiming and stabilization. Because as I'm talking about the suspension, of course you've got suspension, but you're driving on terrain, it's really bumpy and you can even jump and fly and stuff. You're going fast. Don't keep us this. um, so in order, like the suspension is not gonna be good enough to be able to stabilize your turret so you can actually hit anything. You couldn't. It was really impossible. So we needed to come up with a good system to stabilize the turret. I'm gonna continue drawing on this image with black. This is gonna be just gonna place a turret on top of it. I've got a turret on a tank. Now I've got a gun. This is the gun. Turret can turn in this way. This is how the turret can turn, right? Now we've got a gun, and the gun can turn up and down. There is no problem with stabilizing uh, uh, in stabilizing the, because when you're bouncing, this is the problem, this angle. So the turret wasn't an issue. So we needed to somehow counter all the bouncing on the terrain, like going up and down, up and down. How did we do that? Anyone has a guess? Were you a historical war buff before? No, I didn't know anything about tanks, and I have to admit that all this math and everything was university grade math and physics, and I mean, sure, I had B on from math, and the other year I had A. I wasn't bad at it, but I didn't remember it. It was still uh, 2 years from my university, and I already managed to forget all of it. So yeah, I had to do a little bit of math research as well. So how did we counter the movement up and down? Tank chassis. This is chassis. That's the big thing, right? Body, the main body. This is chassis. Has some kind of point. I'm gonna. Hmm, some. Okay, this is center point of the chassis, and now it's moving up and down. It is some kind of rotation. How do we balance it? So if it's going up, it's going up. So then I want to take the turret, the gun, and I want to move the gun down to counter this movement, right? So you take this rotation and subtract it from this rotation. Every single frame, all the time, you would do that. Now the problem was it was too good. Then we had to go to designer and go, hey, buddy, I need to play this game with you, and we need to come up with good balance. How bumpy can we still stabilize it, and when do we stop stabilizing? When do we let the turret simply go off wildly? So we limited the rotation speed that we could apply here to some reasonable amount, and it did turn out quite good. However, there were some issues. Imagine there were still some issues. Imagine that you're driving on this kind of steep thing and you're going forward. Like this is the and this is your little tank and it's going forward that way. Well, the problem is that now it's not just up and down movement in the world, but it's kind of this kind of movement. So we couldn't stabilize this turret left and right because it was really slow and heavy turret. The movement of the turret wasn't fast enough to cope with it. So that we kind of left in the game with, like, that's the limitation that the player has to fight with. Like, it cannot be perfect. Let me show. Yes, all things around World of Tanks, damage, aiming, and other kinds of physics. Sorry. Okay. Do you guys have any questions about these things? I was actually talking longer than I thought I would, to be honest. For that it would be just half an hour. Questions, please. Turret physics. What's turret syndrome? Like, yeah, like, yes, for gameplay reasons, you can't have the turret fast enough because it would be just sitting in a place and just clicking with a mouse on different tanks. please ignore my messy bed behind me. How was World of Tanks adapted to move from the 360 to a console? Actually, that's a good question. Kind of brings up memories about the engine. Because imagine that you use English at your work and you've been hired by a third party to do something for them with their game. That was kind of our situation, that we were hired by Wargaming to do several things. Our first task was to come up with a test demo, which was fully functional World of Tanks with just 2 maps and 2 tanks. We didn't have time to do more models, obviously. However, it was fully functional, and it took 6 weeks in Unity 3D, which was quite an achievement. Our second task after that was to look at their engine and see if we can find some major issues that could improve performance. Well, I was looking at their engine and I was going like, all right, I didn't really get really see. Yeah, I mean when tank is moving. Okay, I'll get back to that. So anyway, the engine. Why would I facepalm while looking at the code? Engine was Big World Engine, which is it's a company from Australia makes the engine. The code is C++. Variable names and commands would often use Australian slang, and we did not understand it at all. We couldn't even Google out what does it mean. So that was like, okay, what's this? I don't know. Now, the game code written by quote Russians, quote because there is a studio in Ukraine, Belarus, etc. It's not exactly Russians, right? Um, so that code, the whole documentation was written in Russian language, which we didn't understand. By the way, the code was in Python. GUI was written in Java, HTML, and CSS. So now we have 5 different languages using variables in a slang that you don't understand, and documentation in Russian. um, just no. Yeah, it was some kind of a mess of things. I don't even remember how does it work. It just does. Spaghetti. So yeah, and to get back to this question, how about aiming when the tank is moving on rough surface badly? What does it mean badly in your definition? That's what I was talking about. When the tank is moving quickly, it's kind of bouncing up and down, like up and down, like it's jumping. So that's how we counter. Like when it's moving up, the tank chassis, then the turret on the tank would go down. That's chassis goes up, turret goes down. Chassis goes up, turret goes down. I'm saying turret, I mean the gun. This is turret, this is gun. Bleep. Yeah, it required us to come up with really. It did take a lot of gameplay testing, and the same for actually engine, because the we needed to come up with good engine values. Like you could tweak the engine to be insane. Like imagine this 80 tons heavy tank and you give it a really powerful engine. Oh my god, we were driving like crazy and drifting with tanks. We could do really silly things with it. How did you overcome the engine problems since you did not know what? Well, that's the thing. We were just analyzing the performance and preparing a report for them. Like, like this could be improved, this couldn't be improved. So basically, uh, most of the time we didn't spend in the code, but instead in the profiler and just looking at what takes too much time, etc. What else can I tell you? I don't know. I think that we are done. Unless you have made some videos on the tanks drifting with ice. I could show you a video of the gameplay, but I don't want to go too far since it was, people are typing. To be honest, I have to admit, I do kind of miss working on this game because it was a lot of fun. I had the opportunity to shoot and kill my boss. What ideas you get out?
Thank you so much, Rhea. Looks like we might have another question or two here.
It's actually I've got a microphone. It's a standard Sennheiser headset, but I've got a microphone right in front of my lips, and in order to not blow into it, so I've got it's a what is it called, like zip type or whatever, uh fluffy thing.
S. Vito looks like he has a question here. Since the engine was new to you, how was the experience as most inbuilt entities were new that you may not know?
Well, as I said, most of our work was in Unity, which was quite easy for me because we had already experience with Unity. Um, However, optimizing their engine, the big world one, that was just disaster. That I don't think there is much you can do to improve that. It's engine from 2003. It's really old. It lacks everything, and the mess in the code doesn't help. What I had a little bit hard time understanding was the whole system that would take the gameplay code and like you could call uh, engine functions from the Python code, but engine functions would be written in C, C++, and the other way around. From engine code, you would call back to the Python code. So it was a little bit. It was really hard to debug because you would use two different debuggers for two different types of code. It was just insane. Yeah. Okay. I think I'm gonna stop talking.
Thank you so much, Rhea. I wanna thank you again for coming in, talking about World of Tanks, bringing in a little more thought process behind um, the actual like way games are made and the coding and physics behind it. That's something that we definitely want to see more of in maybe the next PDGC as well. Look at this list, by the way. So many people listening in on your talk. Awesome. thank you again so much. Shoot me a message. I think you were recording this video, correct?
Mhm.
Yeah, awesome. If you could,
I hope.
yeah, if everything went right. We also recorded the audio, but we didn't get the video. But yeah, if you missed out on any of it, that means that hopefully we'll have a option for you to download it by the end of the conference. So other than that, we are going to have a 10-minute break, and then the next person in line to talk is Rebecca Heineman with Old School, and she'll be talking programming the Atari 2600. So tune in, 10 more minutes. Thank you again
The
so
meeting has
much,
ended.
Raya. It's been a
My
pleasure.
pleasure.
And thank you so much either way. Have fun, guys.
Bye.